This case is over 25 years old. In fact, it was a case that when I was in cold case, I had reviewed with my team, but we did not have the technology that they thankfully have today.
He does have a family. I don't want to get into too much. Obviously, his family has nothing to do with this. But that's part of why we're here today. I mean, we need to find out what he's been doing over the past 25 years and make sure that there are no other victims, whether sexually motivated or homicides, that he could be involved in.
On the morning of March 8, 1998, the body of 24-year-old Donna Ogilvie was found in a parking lot near the intersection of Carlton and Jarvis Streets in downtown Toronto. She had been strangled. The location where her body was discovered was known at the time for its association with street-based sex trade activity. The lot had no surveillance cameras, and no known eyewitnesses came forward. These factors contributed significantly to the difficulty investigators would face in the early stages of the case. Donna Ogilvie was originally from the Philippines. She had arrived in Toronto from Vancouver approximately 5 weeks before her murder. In Toronto, she had been working in the sex trade. At the time of her death, Donna was 4 months pregnant with her second child and already the mother of one. Her background, recent move, and vulnerable circumstances drew attention from investigators and the public alike, emphasizing the harsh realities faced by women involved in sex work. Investigators from the Toronto Police Service began combing the crime scene immediately after Donna's body was found. Despite a careful search of the area, police were unable to identify any clear signs of struggle or personal belongings left behind by a potential suspect. The location's lack of security infrastructure meant there was no video evidence, and no known witnesses were present to recall Donna's last known interactions. A crucial piece of evidence was recovered from the scene: a male DNA profile. However, in 1998, DNA databases were limited, and no match was found. Investigators were left with a viable genetic profile, but no way to identify the individual responsible. The case remained unsolved as investigators continued appeals to the public for leads, but with no eyewitnesses, suspect description, or forensic matches, progress was stalled. Donna's murder became a cold case.
Following the discovery of Donna Ogilvie's body on March 8, 1998, Toronto police launched a full homicide investigation using conventional forensic and investigative tools available at the time. The location, an open downtown parking lot at Carlton and Jarvis Streets, offered limited evidence. The area had no surveillance infrastructure, and there were no known witnesses. Despite efforts to canvass the neighborhood, interview sex workers, and follow up on local leads, investigators were left with minimal actionable information. A crucial piece of evidence was obtained from the crime scene: a male DNA profile, which was considered a significant lead. However, the National DNA Database was still developing in 1998, and no match was found. Investigators had a viable genetic profile, but no corresponding identity. Without surveillance footage, eyewitnesses, or further physical evidence, the investigation stalled. Although Ronald Ackerman's DNA was eventually linked to the case, at the time of the initial investigation, he was not a suspect and had no known connection to Donna or the crime scene. He was living in Scarborough and working as a truck driver, and his name did not come up in any early police inquiries. In the years that followed, Donna's murder gradually faded into cold case status. While police occasionally re-examined the file, no major breakthroughs occurred. In 2022, Detective Sergeant Stephen Smith, head of the cold case section of the Toronto Police Service, commented publicly on the investigation, stating that while investigators had retained the male DNA profile, they lacked the crucial piece: a name. As he told the Toronto Sun, "We had no idea Ackerman was even in Toronto. The DNA was useful, but incomplete on its own." The surrounding context also presented difficulties. At the time, the area near Carlton and Jarvis was known for high rates of street-based sex work and related crimes. The transient nature of that environment, coupled with the stigma surrounding sex work, made it challenging for police to gather comprehensive testimony or community support. Additionally, law enforcement faced limitations in terms of technological resources and forensic capabilities during the late 1990s. Despite the lack of progress, the case was never formally closed. Toronto police periodically issued public appeals, asking anyone with knowledge of Donna's last movements or potential suspects to come forward. Still, no new information surfaced for more than 2 decades. The case remained one of many unsolved murders from that era, remembered primarily through occasional media coverage and archived police files. It wasn't until significant advancements in DNA analysis and investigative genetic genealogy that the trajectory of the investigation shifted. But in 1998, and for over 20 years after, Donna's murder was a painful reminder of the limits of traditional policing methods in the face of silent evidence.
In 2022, more than 2 decades after Donna Ogilvy's murder went cold, the Toronto Police Service turned to an emerging forensic tool that had begun revolutionizing unsolved crime investigations: investigative genetic genealogy, IGG. With no suspects and a persistent lack of new leads, detectives decided to partner with Othram Inc., a Texas-based forensic genealogy laboratory known for using DNA to solve long-dormant cases. The cold case unit sent the male DNA profile recovered from Donna's crime scene to Othram, which specializes in constructing extended genetic profiles from degraded or limited DNA samples. Using advanced genomic sequencing, Othram built a far more comprehensive profile than what was previously available through standard forensic databases. This allowed them to upload the data to genealogy websites where users voluntarily submit DNA for ancestry research, such as GDmatch. Through the use of public genetic databases, genealogists at Othram began identifying distant familial matches, people who shared segments of DNA with the unknown suspect. These connections weren't close relatives, but third or fourth degree cousins, providing just enough overlap to construct a genetic family tree. Working in close collaboration with Othram's analysts, Toronto police investigators began tracing the branches of this tree, narrowing down the search by methodically reviewing family records, geographical histories, and age ranges. Over the course of the following year, this effort led police to one individual, Ronald Gordon Ackerman. Ackerman was living in Gardner, Newfoundland, and was employed in Alberta's oil sands, flying in and out for work rotations. At the time of Donna's murder in 1998, he had been 25 years old and working as a truck driver while living in Scarborough. His name had never surfaced during the original investigation, and he wasn't in any criminal database, meaning his DNA was unknown to law enforcement until now. Ackerman's identification marked a major breakthrough, not only for Donna Ogilvy's case, but for how cold cases across Canada might be approached going forward. Investigators noted that IGG was able to do what traditional methods could not: put a name to a DNA profile. DT Sergeant Stephen Smith of the Toronto Police Cold Case Section emphasized that they had always possessed the killer's DNA but lacked the means to match it with a suspect. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack. With IGG, we could remove one needle at a time until we got to the one at the bottom. The Ogilvy investigation wasn't the first time Canadian authorities had benefited from IGG. The Royal Newfoundland Constabulary had successfully used Othram services in a separate cold case, the identification of Temi Casas. Casas's remains were discovered in Conception Bay South in 2001, and for more than 20 years, he remained unidentified. Through genetic genealogy, Othram was able to match DNA from a skull to a distant cousin. Eventually, the connection led to a first cousin and a positive identification. That case helped demonstrate the power of IGG in cases where all other methods had been exhausted. In Donna's case, the successful identification of Ackerman showed the potential of IGG not only in solving homicides, but in creating a ripple effect throughout the justice system. As forensic technology advanced and more people voluntarily submitted DNA for recreational and genealogical purposes, the effectiveness of IGG improved. With each submission, law enforcement's reach extended further. By late 2023, investigators had quietly gathered enough evidence to obtain a warrant for Ackerman's arrest. They continued monitoring his movements while confirming his identity and location. The breakthrough came not through new physical evidence or testimony, but through decades-old DNA, amplified by modern science and cross-border cooperation with private sector partners like Othram. The application of IGG in this case not only brought renewed hope for Donna Ogilvy's family and supporters, but also signaled a broader shift in how law enforcement approached long unsolved crimes. With traditional leads long exhausted, IGG had provided a path forward. The success prompted renewed interest in reviewing other cold cases using the same methodology. Investigators underscored that the approach should be used responsibly, with proper legal oversight and attention to privacy, but also recognized it as a powerful and transformative tool in modern policing. On February 5, 2025, Ronald Gordon Ackerman was arrested at Toronto Pearson International Airport by officers from the Toronto Police Cold Case Unit. The arrest took place just after midnight as Ackerman arrived on a flight from Edmonton. He was en route to his hometown of Gardner, Newfoundland, returning from a 2-week rotation working in Alberta's oil sands. Ackerman, now 50 years old, was charged with first-degree murder in connection with the 1998 death of 24-year-old Donna Ogilvy. At the time of the crime, Ackerman had been 25 and residing in Scarborough, Ontario. He was working as a truck driver when police believe he encountered Donna Ogilvy during a sex trade transaction in downtown Toronto. The location where Ogilvy's body was found, a parking lot at the intersection of Carleton and Jarvis Streets, was an area known for sex work during that period. Investigators believe that Ackerman met Ogilvy as a client. The encounter turned violent, and Ogilvy, who was 4 months pregnant at the time, was strangled to death. Her body was discovered the next morning on March 8, 1998. Despite the recovery of male DNA from the scene, the case remained unsolved for over 2 decades. Ackerman was not a suspect at the time, and police had no leads connecting him to the crime. It wasn't until the Toronto Police partnered with the forensic genealogy lab Othram in 2022 that investigators developed a comprehensive DNA profile and began working through potential familial matches. Through this process, they eventually identified Ackerman as the likely source of the DNA. Following his arrest, Ackerman appeared in Toronto bail court by video on February 6th and made a subsequent in-person appearance on February 7th. He was remanded in custody pending further legal proceedings. DT Sergeant Stephen Smith, who led the investigation through the cold case unit, stated that Ackerman had not cooperated with police following his arrest. "He's following his lawyer's advice right now," Smith told reporters. Despite the lack of cooperation, the Toronto police were confident in the strength of the DNA evidence and the genealogical tracing that led to Ackerman's identification. Authorities also emphasized that the investigation was far from over. Smith said that officers were now working to reconstruct Ackerman's movements over the past 25 years. Given the nature of the crime and the time that has passed, police want to determine whether Ackerman could be connected to other unsolved homicides or sexual assaults. Whenever you arrest someone in these historical events, you always have to go back and go through the years that they were out and about without anyone knowing that they were the offender, Smith explained. The arrest had opened a new chapter, not only for Donna Ogilvy's case, but potentially for others that remain unresolved. Ackerman's identification and arrest were made possible only through advancements in forensic technology and the persistent efforts of cold case investigators. While he had previously been known to police, there was no existing connection between him and the Ogilvy case before the DNA breakthrough in 2022. His DNA was not present in any law enforcement database, and he had not been interviewed or flagged in relation to the 1998 investigation. As of early 2025, Ronald Ackerman remains in custody and has not entered a plea. His case is proceeding through the Ontario court system. Meanwhile, the Toronto Police Cold Case Unit continues its work both on Donna Ogilvy's case and in searching for possible links to other unsolved crimes. The arrest has renewed calls for further use of investigative genetic genealogy and re-examination of cold cases. Donna Ogilvy was more than the label she came to be known by in headlines. She was a 24-year-old woman originally from the Philippines, a young mother already raising one child, and, at the time of her death, 4 months pregnant with her second. Seeking a better life and greater opportunity, she had moved from the Philippines to Vancouver. From there, she relocated to Toronto, arriving just 5 weeks before she was killed. Her brief time in the city was marked by struggle, and like many vulnerable women facing economic hardship, she entered sex work as a means of survival. Donna's murder in 1998 became a painful symbol of multiple systemic failures. She was found strangled in a parking lot in downtown Toronto, in an area known at the time for sex trade activity. Her death was treated as part of a broader context of violence against sex workers, crimes often underinvestigated and underreported due to the stigma surrounding their victims. For many, her case represented the widespread indifference to such violence and the urgent need for reform in how law enforcement approaches crimes involving marginalized people. Her family was devastated. Not only had they lost a daughter and sister, but also a young mother whose children would now grow up without her. The lack of justice for more than 2 decades compounded the grief. Yet Donna's name was never forgotten. Cold case investigators, especially in recent years, emphasized the importance of treating her case with the dignity and persistence it deserved. As the years passed, Donna's legacy grew to encompass more than just her tragic death. Advocates began pointing to her case when calling for improved protections for sex workers and more funding for cold case investigations. Her memory stood as a call to action, for justice, for empathy, and for accountability. The pursuit of justice in her case was never simply about solving a crime. It was about recognizing Donna's humanity, acknowledging the life she lived and the dreams she carried, and affirming that every life, regardless of circumstance, is worth remembering and fighting for.
In the absence of forensic breakthroughs for over 2 decades, media outreach played a vital role in sustaining public awareness of Donna Ogilvy's case. By 2019, Toronto police were actively exploring new methods to identify the suspect whose DNA had been recovered from the crime scene in 1998. That year, they released a YouTube video as part of their Cold Case initiative, with investigators appealing directly to the public. In the video, Sergeant Stacy Gallant stated, "What we need is a name to go with this DNA," underscoring the central challenge that continued to block progress in the case. The public appeal did not immediately yield a breakthrough, but it marked a critical turning point in the case's trajectory. For the first time, the Toronto police publicly acknowledged the limitations of conventional investigative tools and invited public assistance. This outreach helped to keep the case in public consciousness, an essential factor for cold case investigations that risk being forgotten over time. In 2021, the Toronto Police Service Cold Case Unit released a podcast episode revisiting Donna Ogilvy's murder. In the episode, Detective Sergeant Stephen Smith emphasized that while the department had a male DNA profile, there were no matches in any known criminal databases. The podcast highlighted the enduring mystery and called for public attention. These efforts renewed interest in the case and signaled the department's ongoing commitment. Though these media efforts did not directly solve the case, they helped build momentum and justify further investment in advanced forensic tools. The renewed visibility likely played a part in the department's decision to partner with the forensic lab Othram and utilize investigative genetic genealogy in 2022. By consistently keeping the case in the public eye, the media became a bridge between stalled investigation and breakthrough. Together, the YouTube appeal and the podcast episode illustrate the evolving role of media in law enforcement. More than just a tool for public relations, strategic media engagement can catalyze new leads, generate pressure for accountability, and support technological advancement. In Donna Ogilvy's case, these public appeals became an essential chapter in the path to justice.
Although Ronald Ackerman has been charged with first-degree murder in the 1998 death of Donna Ogilvy, the case is far from over. The Toronto Police Service, TPS, is now focused on reconstructing Ackerman's movements over the past 25 years. Investigators are working to determine whether he may be linked to other violent crimes, including unsolved homicides and sexual assaults that occurred in regions where he lived or worked. At the time of Donna's murder, Ackerman was residing in Scarborough and employed as a truck driver, an occupation that may have placed him in multiple jurisdictions across Canada. Detective Sergeant Stephen Smith has publicly acknowledged the importance of examining the timeline of Ackerman's life between 1998 and 2025. This process involves reviewing police files from various cities, examining forensic evidence from unresolved cases, and working with other law enforcement agencies. While Ackerman is not currently suspected in any additional crimes, police have emphasized the importance of leaving no possibility unexplored. Investigative genetic genealogy, or IgG, is expected to play a significant role in this continued inquiry. The same technique that identified Ackerman could now be applied to other unsolved cases, especially those with preserved biological evidence. IgG's capacity to develop familial links through public genealogy databases has opened a new frontier in forensic science. This method, though relatively new to Canadian policing, has proven effective in identifying suspects even when traditional methods have failed. The implications extend beyond Ackerman's case. Canadian police services, including the Toronto Police and Royal Newfoundland Constabulary, have already begun exploring wider applications for IgG. Statements from investigators suggest that this approach represents a transformative shift in how historical crimes are investigated. It marks a move from reactive policing to proactive forensic strategy, where time and technological advancement can work in tandem to deliver long-delayed justice. Beyond the technical sphere, the arrest of Ackerman has stirred broader conversations around criminal justice policy and cold case funding. Advocates and law enforcement officials alike have called for increased investment in forensic genealogy resources, as well as standardized national guidelines for cold case handling. There is also renewed public focus on the importance of solving crimes involving marginalized victims, particularly those in vulnerable professions such as sex work. For Donna Ogilvy's family and others still waiting for answers, this new chapter provides a measure of hope. While it does not undo the loss, it offers a path toward closure. As police continue to trace Ackerman's past, the case stands as a symbol of what persistence, science, and public cooperation can achieve. The ripple effects may lead to justice not only for Donna, but for others whose names and stories remain untold.